Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, a top 2% global podcast and one of California's top leadership shows. Each episode brings you real-world insights on burnout prevention, workplace culture, and leadership excellence. And now, here's your host, Michael D. Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Karen Cheong on the line. Karen, how are you?
I am doing 10 out of 10 right now today, Michael, because I get to speak to you.
Awesome. Yeah, 10 out of 10 is a really good score. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to this conversation. It's been on my calendar for a little bit, and I'm like, oh, finally get to talk to her today. So why don't you share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Sure. And before I jump in, I just want to say first, thank you so much for having me on. I've listened to your show, and I just wanted to acknowledge you because, I've created over 240 episodes of my own podcast, and I totally know that this is a labor of love, and it takes a lot of hard work, and you're creating real impact. So I just wanted to honor you for that. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And the other thing before I jump in, for everyone listening, if you could do us a huge favor and go leave a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform that you're listening on so that Michael can get more impact in the world. I've already left mine on Spotify the other day. So if you could come along and join me, I'd appreciate it. So there's a lot of negativity out there in the world. And I think with people who are doing good in the world, it's helpful for us to support. So anyway, I just wanted to request that. Now, I just wanted to give some context to my story. So first of all, as you said, my name is Karen Cheong, and I'm the founder of Spherical Luminosity. And what I found is the process of awakening to the magnificence and power of who you truly are can be really frustrating and confusing, and it certainly was for me. So many people end up spinning their wheels, focusing on the symptom instead of the hidden root of their problems. So they keep experiencing the same struggles over and over again. And what I do is I catalyze your shift from the ordinary to the magnificence of the quantum by giving you the tools to change your frequency resonance so that the life you lead matches the life you dream of. Now, I've helped thousands of people in 48 countries access higher resonating versions of themselves. So not only do they feel their unlimited potential, their reality reorganizes around them. And what really lights me up the most is just how quickly people are waking up to their true brilliance and transforming and up-leveling their lives and the lives of those around them. Now, I totally get that you guys listening might be thinking to yourself, okay, this is a bunch of pseudo-awakened psychobabble, but I didn't start here. And most people are so far from that experience when they start with me. And if I'd heard someone say that at the beginning of my journey, I probably would have thought it was a load of BS, but it's spectacular what can happen. Yeah.
Well, it's, in your career, in law, which tends to be black and white,
Yep.
and, and lots of letters and paper and all kinds of stuff, and to, the frequency thing. And I think about that, just going to law for a second. In many cases, actually most cases, usually a couple parties at least that have a disagreement. That's a very loose, broad term, but we'll just go with that. And I sense that in both situations, or maybe just one, that those parties are not in the right frequency for them. And it's created some environments, just from, someone complaining about their dog barking and they're upset and calling animal control and doing everything. Dogs bark just like people talk. And it's not out of ordinary. It's not in the middle of the night kind of thing, but somebody just has extremely sensitive ears, I'm guessing, or they're going through something in their personal life and they're not operating at their frequency. That's just a off the cuff, thing, just because, sometimes, dogs bark. I live in a building, there's lots of dogs. I hear barking all the time. It's background noise to me. It's like, oh, and I thankfully I can tell the difference between a dog barking just to say hi and a dog barking going, I'm going to attack you or I'm threatened kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I think that what you're talking about, actually, so I trained as an attorney and then, started a whole bunch of I started 2 other businesses. So I was a caterer for a little while. I was trying to find my way. And then I ended up having a real estate practice in San Francisco with my partner and husband, Chris. And it was a practice that we had for 20 years, and we were very successful. And we ended up selling it to start Spherical Luminosity. But as you said, like those, the the experience that you have of the dogs barking and being able to understand that, it's just dogs barking is an indication of like what I call distortion patterns, because that's what actually helps or informs how you see the world. So my point is, you might not be bothered by the dogs barking because you're like, well, what are you going to do about it? Right? There's like, I live in a building, there's like 20 plus dogs in here, they're going to bark. But some other people, that would really trigger them, and they get really upset and write notes to their like condo association and like knock on their neighbors' doors and get really angry, right? And so what's the difference between your response and someone else's response? And that difference is also not only how we show up in our lives, but how we lead, how much success we have, how much abundance we can experience. So all of that is informed by something that I call distortion patterns, and they are the filter through which you see the world. So let me back up a little bit. So from my perspective, everything is vibrating. So the rate of vibration is what informs the form of the thing. Now, the scientists have been talking about vibration for like decades now, so it's like not a news flash in terms of ideas. However, if you take something really physical like water, if the molecular vibration is very high, is steam. And when that molecular vibration slows down, it becomes liquid water. And when it slows down even more, it becomes ice or solid or form. So if you take that idea and you extrapolate it all the way out to consciousness or oneness or pure source, whatever you want to call that consciousness from which everything comes and to which everything returns, that is vibrating at an extraordinarily high rate, which we can't yet measure with our physical tools. So in order for the oneness to be something other than one, just like one infinitely, there needs to be a drop in vibration. When that vibrational drop happens, frequencies are formed. When that vibrational resonance slows down, it becomes energy. And that's what, we talk about these days, when people talk about energy and Reiki and all that sort of stuff. And then when it slows down some more, it becomes physical form or matter. And it even becomes things like your body, your thoughts, your emotions. Now, the thing that causes the perspective that you were talking about, like you versus someone who's very triggered, is something that I call distortion patterns. So distortion patterns look like, to me, so let me back up again. So from my perspective, you are a sphere of pure source energy vibrating at a very, very, very rapid rate. And it's a rate that's unique to you. It's what causes individuation. It makes you, you, and me. So when we drop into incarnation, which is a much heavier density, right? Because your physical body doesn't vibrate that fast. It's solid, right? Compared to something that's gaseous or even beyond that consciousness. So what happens when you drop into incarnation is that layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of duct tape form around the sphere. Now, the sphere is not like wounded or harmed or any way. Some people who meet me are like, is there something wrong with my soul? I'm like, that's nothing wrong with your soul. You just have all this crap around you. So the layers and layers of duct tape are a metaphor for things like your lineage or what your ancestors experienced. And now the field of epigenetics is starting to prove what your ancestors experienced. Very much it informs you, even how your genes express the choices you make. Your cultural conditioning, your religious conditioning, your past lives, and that's just a short list. But those distortion patterns, why do you care about them? Where those are the things that cause you to run up against the wall. They're the things that make the vibration of that sphere of pure source energy very heavy, and it forgets that it's surrounded by that pure source energy in all directions around it. So again, why does that matter? Well, it cuts you off from the limitless. It cuts you off from the abundance, the brilliance, the magnificence that you truly are, because what you see in your life is the duct tape. So let's just imagine that you and me are standing like at a beach and we're looking out at this beautiful sunset. And that's what's there. But what we see are the layers of the duct tape. So let's just say a layer of the duct tape's gray and another layer is yellow and another layer is orange. And then some of it is like thicker than others and it creates warbliness. So when you look through the filters of your duct tape, you don't see this beautiful sunset over, the water. What you see is like cloudy and murky, a little gray and stormy. And you think that's your reality, but it's not. what you're looking at are your distortions, the layers of the duct tape. So that's why when someone gets really pissed off about the dogs, it's because in their reality, they're looking through those layers of the duct tape. And so their response is anger. What are they doing? They're so inconsiderate. Why are people always so rude? Don't they know that there are other people who are in the building? Whereas for you, your distortion patterns aren't the same. So you don't see the sunset the same way that they do. So you're not triggered by it. Does that make sense? So your distortions are there running in the background, informing your entire experience of life. So you know that you're hitting a distortion pattern when that problem that you always have, no matter what you do, the personal development, the coaching, the hypnotherapy, the therapy, the whatever and the whatnot, and you're like, dang, my life is a lot better. I feel better, but I just keep hitting this wall and I can't seem to get past it, and I don't know why. Well, what you're running up against are those filters of those distortion patterns. And the way to do it is to release the distortion pattern so that your reality can reorganize around it and that your perspective can shift, how you feel shifts, how people respond to you shifts, everything changes.
I love that explanation. And you mentioned the duct tape. I had this visualization of if you rent, an old house or an apartment and you look at the doors or maybe the window sills and there's like 40 years of paint on it. And it's just like the you can say, okay, and and for me, and I am by no means a carpenter or anything like that at all. I was somehow, some way was able to make a shelf in wood shop in school many years ago. I don't know how. I honestly don't know how I did it, but somehow I did it. I had evidence that my dad kept it forever, and but I'm thinking maybe I subcontract that out. I don't remember, but I remember bringing it home. Maybe it's possible that the teacher fixed something for me. I don't remember. But long story short, I just had that vision on there, and but it was very similar where you have all of these distortions that get in your way, and you just said something a moment ago that I want to circle back to as well, is when people are, well, we use the phrase when they're improving themselves, when they think life is going better for them, but there's this element of their life that continues to come back, where it could be not good with money or financial troubles or relationship troubles. Everything else in their life is good. Career's going good. They're healthy, all these things, but they keep running up against eh, this, this one hurdle. And like you said, it's, distortion. And you go, argue, well, how, is there, I don't know if there's probably no one size fits all kind of approach, but how would someone go about, because I know a lot of people right now, especially with the economy the way it is and everything else that's going on in the world, finances can be a big challenge. And it's something I hear from people. So if everything else in their life is going good, their job, knock on wood, is good and all of that, but their finances so what are some things that they can do to kind of help peel back those old layers of duct tape and get to a cleaner existence and connect with the energies and levels that they need to connect to? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say something that's probably going to be a little bit irritating to people and will sound a little woo-woo, but give me just a few seconds to explain where I'm going. All right. So the thing is, the distortion pattern of scarcity is a really heavy one, and it's many layered. It's like layers to an onion, right? So if you struggle with money, then chances are you have lots of layers of scarcity patterns, of non-deserving of the money, of your lineage having experienced scarcity in some way. And so I'll just tell a little story just to help explain this to you. So I have a client who found me because she was going through a very difficult time in her business. Business owner, owns a very successful investment house, and from the outside it looked amazing. Okay, so on the outside making lots of money, but what people didn't know on the inside is that she and her co-founder were really on the rocks. Like, they were fighting all the time. They no longer were in alignment in terms of what it is that they wanted to create, what they wanted to give to their clients, etc. So now, my client is the breadwinner of her household. So she's starting to freak out because she's thinking to herself, if I can't make this work, How am I going to feed my kids, basically? I mean, they do very well, so I'm not suggesting they don't, but she's the primary breadwinner. But she's starting to think, right? Like you said, economy is starting to get soft. I don't know what am I going to do? Am I going to have to sell part of this company? Are we going to dissolve it? What's going to happen? And then what am I going to do? How am I going to make enough money? And she comes from a lineage where they've had a lot of up and down with their money. So meaning that in her lineage, what's happened is they've been very successful, had a lot of power, and then lost it all and been really, really like outcast and really been in a situation where there's a lot of poverty and then made it again. So it's been very up and down like that. Anyhow, and she wasn't really thinking about that. She was thinking, oh my God, I've got to deal with my partner. So anyhow, she starts to release her distortion patterns. Now, what does that mean, to your question? Well, it means that she started to first listen to my podcast and then started to listen to the meditations at the end of the podcast, which are free. And at first, she wouldn't listen to meditations because she couldn't sit with them for very long. But then she was like, okay, well, I'm going to keep trying to listen to them. And essentially, she got to the point where she's like, okay, there's something about this that makes me feel really relaxed. And she did this process that I call confirm the removal. And without her really realizing it, what happened was she started to have a different perspective of her partner, which is a hard thing to do because they were at each other's throats, right? Because there's a lot on the line. There's a lot about both of them don't want to lose the business, but they can't continue the way they are. But she starts to, without realizing it, rise in her resonance. And because she's rising in her resonance, her perspective broadens. And she's like, okay, I have a different viewpoint of my partner, meaning I understand why she's triggered around this. Is there a way that we can address her trigger and not diminish what it is that I'm experiencing? So her perspective started to change. She was actually able to be in conversation with her business partner without wanting to gouge her eyes out. They started to be able to have conversation about what it is they both wanted from the business, what it is that they could do with it without it being a real strong fear thing. She continues to do frequency work at an accelerated rate because she's just like, whoa, this is really starting to change at a really rapid rate. I don't even know what's happening. And so as that happens, her frequency resonance continues to rise. She continues to listen to the meditations. She continues to confirm the removal. What happens ultimately, Michael, at the end of this is she's released enough of her own scarcity patterns and she's released enough of her own low self-worth, self-doubt, a whole bunch of stuff. Who she is different. Who her partner is in relation to her has shifted because she's shifted. Ultimately, what's amazing to me is that at the end of the story, not only do the partners reconcile, they start to shift how it is that they're going to be as managers. They shift who's on the team. Both of them start working much less. And interestingly, the company starts to double and triple his revenue. Now, did she do anything different in her business? Meaning, did she execute new strategies? Did she do any of that? No. I mean, did she change her team? Yes. But that team change wouldn't have happened unless she and her partner had different conversations, unless she was different, who she attracted in terms of team members changed. All that stuff shifted because her frequency resonance rose. Now, what did she do, right? Because that's okay, that's great, Karen. Fantastic. So just give me that to do. So what she did was she started to listen to what I call group frequency calibrations, which sound like a guided meditation. But in the background, I'm releasing, those distortion patterns, those layers of duct tape that we talked about at the very beginning. I'm doing that at the level of the field or the quantum. This is what Deepak Chopra has been talking about for decades, and Linley Taggart and Dr. Bruce Lipton and Dr. Joe Dispenza. They've been talking about the field for decades and writing books about it. So anyway, I release it at the level of the quantum. Now, I realize there's a lot on social media about the quantum. A lot of it is actually not accurate. It's simply a resonance level. But that's at the level of the field where things are vibrating really fast at the level of frequency. And we all think when we run around in our worlds and doing our things that we have to do a bunch of stuff and then things will change on the spirit level. But it's actually the opposite. When you change things at the higher resonating order, like the level of the quantum, the physical will reorganize around it. So to reiterate, what did she do? She simply listened to group frequency calibrations and did this process that I call confirm the removal, which has to do with becoming aware of who you are, be aware of your patterns, accept that you were creating your reality and creating those patterns, release those patterns, and then choose to do something different. Now, it sounds like a very simple process. It is. Things on spirit level aren't that complicated. We try to make them complicated. But the thing is, it's about, well, do I want to keep listening to this, different meditations? Do I want to keep being self-aware? Do I want to keep releasing these? And, some people will go a certain distance, like, okay, well, I've resolved that problem, so I'm going to stop here. And some people keep going because they're like, well, if I did that and that changed, what happens if I keep doing this? And so it kind of depends on you where you like to stop. But what can happen is that who you are, who you think you are, who you attract, what you get to experience, the level of abundance, the amount of change, the amount of expansion, your perspective, everything changes once your frequency resonance rises.
It's amazing for that. And it reminds me, because I do a lot of work with teams and individuals.
Yeah.
They're, with workplace culture problems. There's no trust, there's no communication, and what you were saying was screaming what the challenge is for those individuals. They're coming with all of these all the duct tape. I love that analogy, the duct tape. And they bring it in, and this duct tape doesn't match up with that duct tape. And like everybody's upset with each other and
Yeah.
pointing fingers. And it goes back to, especially when I work with some individuals and they're complaining about their manager and their manager is relatively new. And I asked them, okay, what do you think it's like to be a new manager? I just ask them that
Mhm.
question, just because I want them to think. Because in many cases, I don't think they've really thought about that.
No,
And then
no.
go,
Yeah.
and they go, okay. It's like you were really good at something. The company decided, hey, well, you can manage people,
Hmm.
not necessarily. Now you can, but not just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're good at managing people. So you have to. It's a new skill. And again, that could go back to those layers and those conditions where, multi-generation blue collar type of history in your genetics, and all of a sudden here you are in a leadership manager type of role,
Yeah.
not in a blue collar role, and you're telling yourself subconsciously or maybe even consciously, that I'm not qualified to do this. So all of a sudden you're going into work every day thinking I'm not qualified to do this. And what is that going to do? Well, your fight or flight mechanism is going to kick in. There's all kinds of different things that
Absolutely.
happen. And I encourage people, it's like, kind of do whatever you can to try to gain perspective from what they might be experiencing. I mean, hope maybe you
Absolutely.
could just ask them and they would be, upfront about it. Maybe they won't be, but it peels back those layers. And you mentioned that before when with the dog analogy, where the person that's uber sensitive to the dog barking, there could be
Mhm.
something big time going on in their lives right now, and
Yeah.
the dog is a stand-in for something else, and
Yeah.
so understanding that, you know, with an element of compassion and doing whatever you can to help mitigate that can and go a long way, and it kind of it ties in, and you've been talking about this a bit, but one of the things too that really haven't really dived into too much is this concept of timeline jumping, and I'm
Mhm.
curious about that because I've seen it, I've heard about it, but I don't quite comprehend. I'm sure my audience is like,
Yeah.
"What do you mean by timeline?" They're thinking
Yeah.
movies or you jump between scenes.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah. 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 Like glass doors or something like that, or
Yep,
butterfly effect or something. Yeah. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and how it
Sure.
ties into this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you've probably timeline jumped without realizing it. So, backing up out of this. So, in the infinite field of possibilities, there are infinite numbers of timelines. And a timeline is simply a trajectory through time of your life, right? So, here you are in your life, and it has a certain trajectory. Now, the thing is, what dictates what your trajectory is, what your experience is, who you meet, how much inspiration you have, like what opens to you, really depends on your own frequency resonance. So let's just imagine that your frequency resonance when you start is like this tiny little keyhole. So you're looking through almost like this pinhole. But then as your frequency resonance rises, and so, sorry, you don't see anything but the pinhole. So you don't see anything else around it, right? You just see through the pinhole. But what happens is as your frequency resonance rises, you start to do this, meaning your the keyhole starts to expand, 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 and the possibilities or the timelines you have access to get greater and better in quality. So let me back up again. You have probably experienced a timeline jump. In fact, you know you have, but you just don't realize it 'cause you don't think about it this way. Because everybody has in their life a pivotal moment, or many more than a pivotal moment, where they decided, I'm going to do this or that. Say yes or no, go to this or don't go to this. And because of whatever choice you made, you met a person, you had an experience, something unfolded that wouldn't have if you had said the opposite answer. So if you hadn't gone to the thing, you wouldn't have bumped into this person who gave you the name of a book, you wouldn't have read it, you wouldn't have ended up where you are now. Everybody in their life has a number of these moments where you know, if I had not done that thing, if I had not said yes or no in that moment, I would not be living this life that I am today. We all have these pivotal moments. So when you choose yes or no, you actually, without really realizing it, in those pivotal moments, are shifting timelines. You're shifting from one trajectory of what your life looked like to another trajectory, and it changes your experience of life. Now, the key, of course, to all of this, even, I mean, it can sound very like, ooh, well, that sounds exciting. I mean, don't I want to be in a better, more abundant timeline? Well, of course you do. One where I have, more impact on people and I can help more people if that's what you're interested in. Yes, you can. And it all hinges on your resonance. So the higher your resonance, the more access you have to these higher resonating timelines, because whether you're aware of it or not, what you're experiencing in life is a reflection of your frequency resonance. So how high or low you are dictates what you get to experience. So just as a little example of this, I had a client who was, in her 70s, and she had been married for like 50 plus years. Now, this is a woman who's older, and she came from a generation where the women didn't go out and breadwin, right? They stayed at home, raised the kids, took care of the house. That's what they did. And she always had to ask her husband for money because that was the generation that she was raised in. And she really hated it. And she gotten to the point where she's like, okay, that's it. I don't want to be with this man anymore, but I'm not financially independent enough. She had it in her mind, she's like, I want to get a divorce, but I can't do it because I'm not the breadwinner. So how do I like make it? You know what I mean? Financially, I'm in my 70s. I mean, it's not like I'm gonna like start working. So anyhow, long story short, she starts working with me. She starts to raise her resonance. Her husband becomes more open to different ideas, including selling their home, which she was very resistant to before. But when she starts to release her patterns, her resonance rises, he shifts. Okay. So what happens is they end up through a lot of trials and tribulation, a lot of work on herself, a lot of resistance for him. They end up selling this house. Now, she's all prepared to go in and have a big conversation with him where she's like, okay, we've sold the house. I would like to have a divorce, and I would like to have half of the proceeds so I can live the rest of my life. She gears up, she's all ready, she goes in for the conversation, and she's just had another session where she's like released a bunch of her distortion patterns. So she's been doing this work consistently. Before she can open her mouth, he says to her, I haven't really been asking you what it is that you want to do with the rest of your life. So I feel like you should manage the proceeds from this house and decide what we're going to do next. And she said to me, Karen, like, it was like the first time in my life, I'm like totally speechless. Like, it's just like, this is like a totally different man. Like, I wanted to leave him because he was so controlling. He never asked my opinion, etc. And yes, I mean, he's been changing because of the work that we're doing, but like, what happened? She goes, I feel like I've just jumped timelines. And I'm like, yeah, you just did. Because what happens? In the different timelines, the version of you is different. The versions of the people in your life are different. And so the version of him that showed up was a very different version than the man she had been with all this time. So now she actually chose to. This is fascinating to me. This is somebody she used to loathe, wanted to divorce. Now he's changed so much, they have reconciled and they bought a sailboat and they are sailing around the world, which was not in her plan at all. So this is a woman who had stayed in the same house for over 35 years, raised her kids, and now she's like sailing in a boat with a guy that she actually likes and is rediscovering love with and adventuring with. So that is not the same life. It's a totally different timeline she's experiencing. So the key is the jump in her own resonance, because what you have access to, what your life looks like, what the reflection of life is for you is a direct reference or reflection of the resonance that you are. So yeah, it's pretty spectacular what can happen.
Yeah, and it just screams that, if you raise your resonance and you elevate yourself, you at least if you shift timelines and the other person did. Otherwise, she may have bought that boat, but he may have gone on the boat. He may not have come back to dock with her, but that's another story for another day. I am that's a beautiful story, and it's like I sometimes say, well, it's rediscovering love. It's like, no, I think in this situation, it is discovering love with a new person that just happens to
That's right.
look
That's
and
right.
be somebody that you know. And I think that says a lot. But I highly encourage the listeners to take a look at your life if you're having issues at work or at home, or hopefully not both, but in many cases, every which way, if people are having issues, it's like, okay, well, let's deal with that duct tape. Let's maybe shift some things, do some work. Obviously, listen to your show. It's an amazing show that it's like you're a caregiver, and you're like, come on, let's go along here. It's very, it's very, comforting. And like, you mentioned it a moment ago, where it's like, people are like, I can't slow down to, listen and meditate. And it's like, okay, let me try it now. And all of a sudden, they've jumped timelines. The version of them that they were is no longer here. And for them, it's like, they gangbusters with their business. The business is good. It's not like they rolled out this new thing that everybody wanted to buy. It's like, no, we got the same stuff, but it's like, we put ourselves and we have the energy in the right place for it to happen, and we weren't blocking it ourselves. And I think that's kind of the takeaway of things, is people block things from themselves. So yeah, and I love this conversation. Probably could talk about 10 hours on this, but I really appreciate your time today. Where can people find out more about you and everything you're doing?
Well, thank you for asking, Michael. I appreciate the ask about that. And as I mentioned in the beginning, and as you've mentioned, I have, my own podcast, over 200 episodes, and it's such an active contribution that you're doing. And I know that you're constantly giving your audience massive value, and I'm inspired to do that too. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be giving everyone listening something really special, and something I put together just for your audience. And I'm going to give you what I call my Resonance Reboot Bundle. And it consists of 3 incredibly powerful goodies that I'm going to give for free to your listeners. But before I give you the specifics, let me explain who this is for. Okay? So if you're someone who wants to remove the blocks like we've been talking about that keep you stuck, and then learn the tools to raise your resonance, to live a life you never thought possible, then this is for you. It's what we've been talking about this whole podcast. Now, right now, you might feel like you're doing all the things, right, to try to move yourself forward in that one area of your life, whatever it is, therapy, personal development, whatever, but you're still stuck, and that can feel really disempowering. And I'm not saying that your life hasn't improved. It probably has, but there's that one area where it can be really painful, and it can feel like there's even no freaking hope. But what you really need to do is raise your resonance, so that how empowered you feel and what your life actually looks like can shift. And that's what I'm going to help you with. So there are 3 awesome products in the Resonance Reboot Bundle. Number 1 is the Frequency Accelerator Group Frequency Calibration to help boost your resonance. That's only 20 minutes long. You can do it when you get up, make your coffee, just put that sucker on. That will help. And then the second and third part of the Resonance Reboot Bundle are things that I normally only give to paying clients. Okay. And these are 2 video workshops that amplify each other. So number 2 is called Emptying Your Teacup, Making Way for the New. And this will help you to start to clear out all the outdated limiting stories and beliefs. Like you said, Michael, help to get you out of your own way. And the third thing is stability, growth, and opportunity in chaos, which, if you look at the world right now, I think we could all use right now with all the crazy stuff that's happening. So Emptying Your Teacup sells for $99, and Stability, Growth, and Opportunity in Chaos is $4.99 on our website. So between the 2, that's almost $600 in value for free. just for your audience, and you literally cannot find this bundle anywhere else online. And ultimately, this will help you to finally create momentum so you can really start to live a life you never thought possible. So if you want access to the Resonance Reboot Bundle, just go to my Instagram, which you can find me at spherical_luminosity, and DM me the word reboot111. So once again, if you want the Resonance Reboot Bundle for free, just DM me reboot111 at Spherical Luminosity, and I will send those right over to you.
Thank you for that wonderful gift, and I highly encourage everybody do it. It's not going to hurt you. You
Yeah, it's
even,
not.
even if it's a 1% incremental gain for you, that is going to be life changing. It's the ripple effect, folks. You just so please take Karen up on this. So Karen, thank you so much for this. It was a gift to me. I really appreciate your time today and love this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show. If you're dealing with a toxic workplace or feeling stuck in a challenging job, you don't have to go through it alone. Join our Dealing with Toxic Workplace community today at community.breakfastleadership.com and learn practical ways to protect your peace, rebuild confidence, and lead with strength. See you inside the community.